So we're making pizza dough today. I bet you all have seen this in the store. This is Fleischmann's dry yeast, and they come in quarter-ounce packages. And what this does is give you the rise in your dough. So what we're going to do with this to kind of dissolve it is we have 3/4 cup of warm water. Warm water is basically between 105 and 115 degrees. If you have an instant read thermometer, you can check that. I never do, so it's not really important. We're just going to snip the top off of this and dump the contents into here. We're going to add a 1/2 teaspoon of sugar. That's for the yeast to feed on. And we just want to kind of stir that in there. But what you're looking for is some foamy stuff to rise to the surface. Now, to properly measure your flour, I make the pizza dough so that it gets a little bit more of a nutrient and healthier dough, is I do half whole wheat flour and half all-purpose. We basically want to scoop out our flour, and we want a cup of both flours. When you go to measure flour, you want to use something as your scooper and then fill the measure cup with your flour. You're somewhat aerating the flour, and if you were to just say we only wanted a 1/2 cup, and you were to measure it with the thing that you're ending up the yield that you want, what you're doing is compacting that flour in. Here, when we're scooping and filling, this is aerating the flour, and you won't get too much flour in your recipe, and this is how most bakers measure their flour. So you're just going to have more successful baking endeavors if you measure your flour this way. So we have a cup of whole wheat flour. Now we're going to do our all-purpose the same way. Scoop this out, get that in there using a flat edge of a knife. This is a butter knife, just to get it level. And put that in there. And then we want to add some salt, and I like kosher salt for pizza, because I like the crunchy bits of it, and a little more or less, really not going to matter. Depends on your palate. So we're going to add that to the dough, and we're going to just stir that around a little bit. And then we're going to add about 1.5 teaspoons of olive oil. And then, of course, our lovely yeast. And look how foamy that is. That is pretty gorgeous. That's exactly what we want it to do. So I'm just going to scoop that out. We're going to stir this with a fork. You can use a spoon. I just like a fork because it tends to get mixed in easily. And we'll get it to where it forms a dough. And the flour won't probably be all the way incorporated. Before we start to knead. So what we want to do is dump this out on a nice dry, clean surface so that we can really get our hands in there. So I'm just going to gather it around, and we're just going to try and get it to be more cohesive. Don't worry if every little bit doesn't combine well. It's okay. And if your dough is a little bit sticky, and it depends on the wheat that the flour was made, whether it's summer or winter, whether it's hard, soft wheat. The moisture content in your flour will change depending on the season, such as it's really kind of humid in this kitchen, so the flour is a little bit moister. So just know your dough. And for the kneading process, basically, this hand is the rotator. I'm using this to move and turn the dough in a circular motion. If I feel anything sticking on the bottom, you dust your surface like that. You don't want to overly heavily coat your surface because then you're going to get way too much flour in your dough. So this is basically the technique for kneading a pizza dough, a bread dough, any dough that basically needs kneading. And you don't really have to do this very long. It comes together really quickly. What you're looking for is you want this to be really smooth, and one way to test to see if it's done and kneaded all the way, we're just going to press on this and see how it bounces back. This dough is done. We would then put this in a lightly greased bowl and cover it with saran wrap and put it in a nice warm place so that it will then rise and double in size. We would then punch this down, roll it out, top it, and put it in an oven. It bakes for about 10 minutes, and that's it. Dinner's done.